America, welcome to the Business Pulse, brought to you by the Freedom Chamber at freedomchamber.net, the pro-American business network. If you own a small business, a medium-sized business, we're happy you're here. You know somebody that does? Have them sign up today, freedomchamber.net. It's the usual suspects. It's Rod Martin. It's Dean Owen. Gentlemen, welcome back into the Business Pulse.
Good to be here.
Awesome to have you here. Let's talk our first topic. Let's talk about the $9 billion worth of spending cuts that's turned into of course, another circus on Capitol Hill. Rod, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on what you're seeing and how it's all being chopped and taken away.
Well, it's necessary, and I wish Elon had waited to see it. This is how it has to be done. You couldn't do this kind of rescission within the big, beautiful bill. But Trump promised all along, this is the first of many. We're going to go at a bunch of this. This is really meaningful. The number is not huge compared to the federal budget, but the impact is tremendous. This basically eliminates USAID outright. The only things left are the actual humanitarian relief programs, feeding the hungry, actually distributing vaccinations to sick people in Africa, stuff like that. And all the Democrat slush fund is gone. The LGBTQ indoctrination, the sterilization of 300,000 native girls in Latin America, the overthrow of countless governments. This is an agency that had 3 times the budget of the CIA, for goodness sake. And the Democrats were just using it as a piggy bank. We saw that when they shut down in the first place because several U.S. media outlets suddenly couldn't make payroll because their money was coming from your pocket corruptly thanks to the Democratic Party. So this is a huge, huge deal. And also we're getting rid of federal funding for NPR and PBS. I'd have never understood why we need state-owned media in the richest country in the world. That's absolutely absurd. This is a big deal. It's the first of many.
And not to be I told you so, but you know, Rod and I talked about this the last several weeks, that we couldn't do this in the big, beautiful bill. So all the hate mongering and carrying on about the national debt and cutting spending was absolutely meaningless and probably nothing more than people want to get camera time. So Trump has, if anything, he's going to tell you exactly what he's going to do, and then he's going to go do it over and over and over again. That's been the pattern, and this is what he said he was going to do. So why is it any surprise to anyone that we're doing it? That is beyond me. So
if anybody has earned our trust at this point, it's Donald Trump. There is nobody, not a single politician in my lifetime, who has kept his campaign promises as militantly and rigorously as Donald Trump. Even things like getting rid of the Johnson Amendment the other day, which is a campaign promise nobody remembers except a handful of us nerds. And he's out there getting it done. They weren't able to do it in the first term. Here he is. He didn't even talk about it in the 2024 campaign, and he's out there doing it. And it's just extraordinary. So if he says it, we should believe it. And if something goes wrong along the way, well, we know he tried.
yeah, and I think it's something to point out, and it's profound, but it's very accurate. This president does not need money. He does not need fame. He does not suffer from boredom. He has a huge family. He's had 2 assassination attempts. He got shot once. What are you willing to risk your life for? Your family and your country. That's what he's doing it for. And how that gets lost and does not get seen is absolutely beyond me. I have no idea how the world does not see that. And, you know, it's like every liberal and the terrorist to hate him. Well, you know, the people that hate Donald Trump are lining up really, really well with America's enemies.
Yes.
That is very true. Well, we coined a phrase before we got on the air. We first called it the triple T. Now we call it the quadruple T. Trump's tariff temper tantrum. We've all seen it. We've all seen it on TV. We've seen it in the press. We've read about it on X, on social media. Rod, your thoughts on how tariffs are playing out inside the economy? We got the June report, and it came back what we thought it would be, right?
Well, I was impressed that the Wall Street Journal actually admitted in print today that Trump's trade war is working. And they are still unhappy about it, of course, but they're right. And, you know, they're like, look, okay, he hasn't signed 90 deals in 90 days. That's true. But he's achieving his purposes. He's isolating China. He's redrawing the map. He is forcing U.S. access into markets we've been cut out of. And oh, wait, inflation isn't where they said it would be. So, in every possible way, this is working out. It has a lot more to go. And Trump was perfectly clear at the G7 in 2018 that in an ideal world, we would have no trade barriers whatsoever. But that's not the world we're in at this moment. And if we can force some of these so-called allies to act a little better, give us the same access to their markets that they have to ours, actually bring down some of these absurd things like Germany hitting us with 4 times the auto tariff that we charge them. If we can solve some of those things, the entire world is going to be richer.
And actually, this morning's inflation data was 2.2, 2.7, depending on which metric you're looking in, all came in below expectations. And in June, the federal government ran a $27 billion surplus. You know, that doesn't happen in June. That happens in April when everybody gets their taxes paid in. But this happened in June. So where did that money come from? It came from tariffs. 118 to 130 billion dollars collected in tariffs so far this year, depending on who you listen to. It's working. It's working. You know, we talked about the $5 million gold card. That's another revenue source. We talk about fees for access to America. This president is a businessman. He thinks like a businessman, not like a politician. And politicians don't understand how business people think. So that's simple. It is that simple. And you don't add to it, because if you start adding to it, you're going to get it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, we have the biggest consumer market in the world. We are not an export-driven economy, though we would like to export more. Trump is forcing that. Our energy position, largely thanks to Donald Trump, is one that is going to allow us to become a bigger and bigger exporter. And that will correct a lot of the trade surpluses other countries run with us, trade deficits we run with them. I mean, if we just started supplying most, if not all, of Europe and Japan's LNG needs, it transforms our economic picture with all of those countries. And it also massively secures them. They have been dependent on supply from the Middle East and from Russia for decades. It's absurd. They can buy it from Texas and Louisiana and Alaska, and the whole world gets better.
Yep. And it's environmentally clean. You got to love natural gas if you're one of these people that's running around screaming about air quality. Why the left does not embrace that, I think we all know it's because there's no money in it for them. But it's good for the environment. It's good for America. It's good for our allies. You know, it's pretty pathetic shame that Europe has bought more natural gas and oil from Russia than the weapon shipments into Ukraine have been.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and I keep coming back to that. And what Trump just pulled off at the NATO summit is brilliant and extremely helpful. The deal yesterday to get the Europeans to pay for the munitions we're going to send through them to Ukraine. People aren't understanding why that works. Well, it's simple. Ukraine can't pay. If we don't ship it to the Europeans, we're not going to get paid. But the Europeans can't make it. There's one TNT plant in the entirety of Europe west of Russia. So we have to make the weapons. We have to be the arsenal of democracy. And it's about time our allies stepped up and paid some of the bill.
Right. So we're getting paid for our second, third, fourth generation technology, and we'll use that money to replace it with first generation technology.
Exactly. And not just for us, but for everybody ultimately.
That's
and
how
that will
businessman
dovetail
thinks.
us into one of the guests that we're going to have coming up on the Business Pulse, Don Buckner, the president and CEO of MadeInUSA.com. It all wraps together in one big red, white, and blue ribbon when you really think about it. This is the Business Pulse. We're joined by Rod Martin, the CEO of Martin Capital. You can find him online at rodmartin.org, and I highly encourage you to sign up for the Martin Report. And we also have Dean Owen of Owen CPA. You need a CPA that's going to do right for you. He's your guy. This is the Business Pulse, and we will be right back.
Hey, the Freedom Chamber is amazing. I'm so glad that we get to be here on the Freedom Chamber's Business Pulse. This is an organization you should support. It's an organization of which you should be a member. The Freedom Chamber is getting important things done in this country. And honestly, we need spaces for people who believe the sorts of things that if you're watching this, you probably do. We have gone through this extended period of not just canceling individuals, but just boycotting businesses and doing terrible things, debanking. Nigel Farage, who is likely to be the next prime minister of the United Kingdom, was actually debanked by all the major banks in the United Kingdom. And of course that happens here, and we get de-insured and all these terrible things. The Freedom Chamber is fighting for you. The Freedom Chamber is here to make sure that you're protected, that your values matter, they count, and they're in the public square. So I encourage everybody to join the Freedom Chamber.
This is the Business Pulse, brought to you by the Freedom Chamber, online at freedomchamber.net, the pro-American business network, and one of the founding members, Don Buckner, the president and CEO of MadeInUSA.com, has joined the chat along with Rod Martin and Dean Owen. And gentlemen, I'm going to throw this topic out there like a grenade. Tariffs. Have at it. What do we know what's going on, Don?
Well, for the first 100 days or so, we had a lot of ups and downs, and the manufacturers, actually, there was a lot of nervousness. And the reason was that a lot of them that we deal with, they bring in some of their parts, right? And so there was a lot of uneasiness about whether or not, what they had to do. And so now that all that's settled, there's a sense of calmness that has happened. We also, during this period, we've been getting a lot of calls and people wanting to reshore their products. And we have basically turned into more or less a facilitator of sorts to help people identify manufacturers, possibilities, capabilities of different manufacturers that we have. We have 500 manufacturers that we work with. And bringing those products back into this country is not all that difficult. There's plenty of capacity. There's plenty of machines here to operate and do most of the production here very economically. And a lot of it's automated. So costs are way down.
Well, what do you think the outlook is in light of the big, beautiful bill? I mean, we have been praising it to the skies, but I'd love to hear your take.
Well, again, that was part of the uneasiness with these manufacturers. They couldn't do any planning. They actually held off a lot of their budgeting. A lot of that was because taxes are part of the budgets. And to be able to have some sense of stability, we've had a lot of really, really good things from these manufacturers. They're excited. And again, that uneasiness seems to have settled.
Yeah, and what I would not so much a question, but as a statement of support, we are going to onshore stuff. We are bringing stuff back. People, I remember the hate and the dribble that, oh my God, people don't want to work in factories. Yeah, they do. Honda's looking at building their trucks in a Nissan factory in Tennessee. So there's lots of things there. But then what Made in USA is doing is helping connect the folks and connect the dots, because there's so many variables, and how do you figure out who's this and who's that? And so what they're doing, they're doing God's work, bringing stuff back to here. And again, we all tend to have the same beliefs and the same shared values. We want to vote with our dollars, and this is a good way to do it. And I'm all about voting with my dollars. So,
well, the whole idea that there are all these jobs that Americans don't want to do, that's, first of all, utter elitist nonsense. But second, it's propaganda. They just want cheap foreign labor that they don't have to pay minimum wage. And if they're illegal aliens, you can get away with murder. So they have been feeding us this lie for the last 20, 25 years, just trying to keep their gravy train going. It's not true. And we're going to see some recovery of good wages in this country and be back to where we were in 2019, where we actually had more jobs available than we had people to take them. That's a wonderful problem to have. And maybe we can solve it through a higher birth rate and legal immigration, but you're never going to solve it the way they've done it.
we were talking about the inflation print earlier that came out today. The wage increase that came out today, and it's about a point higher than the inflation rate. So wages are growing faster than inflation. That's reversal of a decades long trend.
Yeah, we're seeing the tariffs are doing a couple different things. One is creating revenue for the federal government, right? Which is a catch-22, meaning that more imports, more income on the tariffs. At the same time, you also want more production in this country. And the idea is to keep dollars within this country. So every time a dollar changes hands, it creates wealth. And so the more times you can change hands with the dollar in this country, you create wealth. So our job as MadeInUSA.com is to take consumer dollars and federal dollars, state dollars, local dollars, tax dollars, our tax dollars actually, and funneling them back to the communities that these manufacturers are. 85% of U.S. manufacturers are family-owned businesses. They are really struggling to get to market. Retailers have cut them off. They resort to go to Amazon. Amazon lists their product next to an imported product for less money, and they lose the sale anyway. So these families are really struggling. But they are generally the number one wealth creator within their community, because they bring money from all over the country and disperse it within their community to their employees, to their suppliers, their supply chain, and all those businesses. And that's money changing hands. So they can actually revitalize their community by simply directing consumer and federal dollars and state dollars and all our tax dollars back to those manufacturers that they're the ones paying the taxes to begin with. So why not spend American tax dollars back on American-made products? And that is one of our big pushes right now, is to get more tax dollars spent on American-made products and making that a very high priority.
Don, that's all correct. I would just add that there's a real national security component to this. We have the capacity to supply 85% of the world's rare earth elements. We eliminated our own ability to do that under Jimmy Carter. And it's just absurd. And Trump's making huge progress on that. You saw the RP Minerals deal with Apple yesterday. Lots of good things are happening. But why are we getting 80% of our pharmaceuticals from China? That's absurd. This is not our friend. If we were buying them from France, it would be bad enough. But this is just crazy. And our administrations have been asleep at the switch for a very long time on the absurd belief that everyone is always motivated entirely by economics. But in reality, in the real world, actually, there are national security issues. There are other issues that come into play, and we have to protect our people.
100%. I have a little pitch I give all the time. I said that 97% of our clothing is not made here, right? 80%, just like you said, of our pharmaceuticals aren't made here. Blood pressure medicine, blood thinners, lots of very, very critical, no vitamin C, no aspirin. None of our technology is made here, none of our phones, none of our computers. So if they cut us off today, 6 months or a year from now, we'd be naked, sick, and Neanderthals without our technology. So our sovereignty is in desperate need to be brought back. And the only way to do that is with manufacturing. And we have been undercut with pricing. The prices have put a lot of these companies out of business. And we have to figure out how to make that products back in this country to get our sovereignty back. There's no other way to do it.
Absolutely. And that's really one of the big reasons why the Freedom Chamber was built, to give people a hub to come to share ideas, to connect. What you're doing at MadeInUSA.com, Don, I believe you're going to see the biggest boom you couldn't even imagine 10 years ago with all this coming into play, with the big, beautiful bill, the spending cuts, people really getting back to championing Made in America, MadeInUSA.com. Gentlemen, we're running up against the break here. Don, thank you so much for all that you do. Thanks for being a founding member of the Freedom Chamber, and we can find you at MadeInUSA.com. We will be right back. This is the Business Pulse.
My name is Dean Owen. I'm a CPA. I have a master's degree in taxation and a personal financial specialist. Tax laws are always changing. That's why you need a tax strategist, not just a tax preparer. You need someone to help you pay the least amount of tax legally. Because if your business and retirement tax planning is not tax smart, It's probably tax dumb. Let's fix that today. Call me. Let's disinherit the government and not your kids. That's what my team and I do. This is who we are. I'm a combat veteran, unapologetically American, unapologetically pro-God, pro-life, and pro-Second Amendment. If those are the values you seek in a tax and money advisor, call us. Again, let's disinherit the government and not your kids. We're not afraid to share our values, and we share them with you.
You're inside the Business Pulse. I'm Chuck Barham, your host, joined by Rod Martin and Dean Owen. Dean, let's talk about owning a business and all of a sudden you're going to sell the business. You've done well for your family, done well for your employees. How do you take care of the taxes that come with that?
Well, that's something that's in the new tax laws. It's very advantageous. There's always been what's called qualified small business stock. And what that is, if your business is under a certain size, which the vast majority are, then you can get between 3 years, you get 50% of your capital gains eliminated, capital gains tax. If you've had it 5 years, then no tax whatsoever. Now, there are some caveats and some tricks to that you have to do and steps to walk through. But literally, if you've got 5 years or more before you sell your business and you structure yourself correctly, your whole gain can be tax free. It was $10 million under the new bill. It's $15 million, up to $15 million tax free. Most businesses are going to qualify. There's some that won't. But if you're looking at selling in 3 years or more, then you need to be talking to somebody about qualified small business stock. It's a big deal. It's a way to save a lot of money, disinherit the government, not your kids. There's some other things in there. We talked a little bit about the ABLE accounts. If you know someone who's got a disabled child or someone at home, maybe it's an adult that they're just not going to be able to make it on their own. There's some phenomenal additions to the bill to ABLE accounts. These are the way that those folks can have money. They can have quality of life. They can live with dignity and not lose their state benefits. So that's not a huge portion of the population, but almost all of us know someone that's fighting that. And if it is, those people need to be getting talked to, because I'm not seeing anything in that in the tax world or the financial services world. It's not being discussed. It needs to be. That's a big deal.
Well, I would just add to that you need a CPA like Dean. And I just don't know how people think they can wing it and not get nicked. The federal government is out for everything you have. And in many cases, your state governments are too. They are coming for it. They intend to loot it. There is no getting around that unless you have very competent, very capable professionals who know the ins and outs of these laws. That's where a CPA can be absolutely invaluable. Honestly, a good tax lawyer also. And I would encourage, for those of you who are not planning to sell, I would encourage you to look at one of the states, principally South Dakota, that has a dynasty trust set up with an absolute elimination of the rule against perpetuities. I mean, you could literally pass down a family business in a South Dakota dynasty trust for the next 1,000 years. And that may sound completely crazy, but there are actually family businesses in Europe and Japan that have lasted longer than 1,000 years. And, that's something we'd all like to aspire to. So, maybe that isn't how it'll work out. But there are so many ways to approach these problems that get you out of needless tax liability. And it's exactly what Dean said. And be sure to call Dean. But it's exactly as he said. You want to disinherit the government, not your kids.
And, that gets into some of the more difficult and larger businesses, but even down to a personal level, if you've got a retired couple, they're 65 and older, they need a projected tax plan. It's called a pro forma. That's accounting geek speak for projected, but they're going to have an extra $12,000 in standard deduction this year. So do we need to look at their withholdings and try to put some more money in their pocket every single month? I think so. So if you're a business owner, if you're a retiree, if you're nearing retirement, you need to be talking to somebody, because this bill is a game changer. And a lot of stuff, it sounds real small or esoteric, or maybe it's not a big deal. it's going to be a big deal. If you got tipped or overtime paid employees, you need to be restructuring some things so that you become a much more attractive employer in an environment where we have a severe labor shortage. Yeah, and it costs you nothing to do that, to make your business much more attractive to these workers that we're trying to drag into the workforce.
And
Absolutely.
we're gonna-
And if I could jump in real quick, guys, because we're running short on time on this segment, I'm going to jump into the mailbag because it kind of all winds itself into this. We have an email here from Greg from Knoxville Farm Implement in Knoxville, Tennessee. He wants to know how him and his wife should be planning for Social Security and taxes with the new bill that's come out. How does that play into next year's taxes and what he should be doing right now? Not waiting until the end of the year, not waiting until Q1 of next year, what he should be doing right now.
That one's a hard one to answer in this form. If he gives us a call, I'll walk him through it personally. No cost or anything, but just give him some good advice. But it depends on the age difference between him and his spouse. It depends on what kind of income they've had.
I'll let you ask that question. How old
Yeah.
his wife is? How's that, Dean?
Yeah.
I'll let you ask that question. Stay away from that stick of
29.
dynamite.
Yeah, yeah. Are there retirement assets, and if they are they regular qualified or are they not Roth assets? So you need a lot of information. It's a fairly straightforward answer once you have the questions. Once you get the answers, the answer falls out. But it's different. If there's a big age gap between husband and wife, then that's one set of planning. If there's a health issue, that's another set of planning. So there's just so many turns, and I'd love to give you an answer, want to give you the right answer, but I'm not going to be a doctor who gives out prescriptions before I do the blood work.
Absolutely. So we'll have Greg at Knoxville Farm Implement in Knoxville, Tennessee, reach out to you because it's something people should start thinking about right now and not waiting until the 12th hour or 23rd hour as tax day is looming. And the big, beautiful bill's got a lot in it, and you guys are going to be busy doing it. And Rod, some final thoughts on anything you want to talk about inside the Business Pulse as we wrap it up here today.
I just want to point out the tremendous benefit of the big, beautiful bill in terms of predictability. We now have the 2017 tax cuts enhanced, improved in a number of ways, but permanent. So you can plan for the future, and it's much, much harder to change that than it would be for it to just expire in the way that these things are normally sunset. So Donald Trump has done a tremendous thing for the U.S. economy. It's gonna boom. This is a great time to invest and expand.
Fantastic.
this-
Once again, go ahead, Dean. Go ahead. You can have that
Yeah,
closing statement.
having predictability, what Rod is absolutely correct. Having predictability is huge because, up until a couple of years ago, we were all figuring that this bill was going to sunset. And I really thought it probably would have, or at least some of it would have. But now that it's permanent, it's going to be a whole lot harder to raise taxes in the future. That's an unseen benefit that we're going to enjoy.
Absolutely. The Business Pulse, you've been inside of it, brought to you by freedomchamber.net. Freedom Chamber, the pro-American business network. Once again, I highly encourage you to join Rod Martin over there at rodmartin.org and sign up for the Martin Report. And just as Dean said, if you've got questions about your business and what's coming down the line with all of your taxes coming due next year, oncpa.com is where you can find Dean. Gentlemen, I appreciate you a lot, and thank you so much for being a part of the Business Pulse.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.